afternoon. This is Pastor John K. Hennigan out here at the Gift of Life Bible Ministry in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. We just want to give you an invitation to come out next week to check out one of our services. Today we did one called Cruise Control, dealing with Eli. Eli and his two sons right there, they was really on cruise control, and really it was all Eli's fault right there because he took on so many responsibilities in life, like sometimes that a father do, that he wasn't paying attention to his crop that was growing at home. And so we just want to ask you to come out and let's sup with us next week at 11 a.m. our service time, right here at the Gift of Life Bible Ministry. We look forward to seeing you here in Rio Rancho. In the book of 1 Samuel, 2nd chapter, verse 12, from the King James Version. It's 1 Samuel, 2nd chapter, verse 12, from the King James Version. And it says, "Now the sons of Eli were corrupt, because they did not know the Lord." They was corrupt because they did not know the Lord. My assignment has been cruise control. Cruise control. I learned something a few months ago about cruise control that I did not know. I was looking through the owner manual of my car, and I was actually looking for a replacement number for a bulb, a light bulb that went out. And then after finding the replacement bulb, I just sat there in the car and browsed through the manual. It was then that I made the discovery: it is not recommended that cruise control be used when it is raining. The manual indicated that if you're using cruise control while it is raining and you somehow manage to start what they call hydroplaning. The engine speed will continue to accelerate in an attempt to gain traction. During this time, it actually poses a greater danger to the driver and the passenger. So I decided to check it out on the internet to see if this device was reliable. While there are some urban legends about cruise control, there were numerous safety warnings that stressed that cruise control not be used in wet or slippery conditions. I also discovered that when a car goes into a slide, if the cruise control is engaged, that the car will actually gain 10 to 15 miles per hour, thus heightening the danger of the situation. So I have to confess that I have used my cruise control numerous of times in wet and rainy conditions, but no more. Cruise control can elevate the danger associated with driving. Basically, what cruise control does on those long stretches of road is allow the driver to zone out and have very little focus required while we are trying to get to our destination. Sometimes the lull that cruise produces can really hinder our responses and reaction to hazardous conditions. Hear me carefully. In families, I also discovered another startling fact. We have cruise control in other places besides our vehicles. We perhaps may not recognize it, but we can get in a cruise control mentality in the whole process of our lives, and there's one facet of life that is more dangerous than all others: with our families. Consider with me what happened when we put our families on cruise control, especially that of a father. When a father put his family on cruise control, he doesn't call it that. It goes by another name. He calls it uninvolvement. From the book, "It is Better to Build Boys Than Men," it says 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 90% of all fatherless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger come from fatherless homes. 71% of all high school dropouts comes from fatherless homes. 85% of youth in prison grew up in fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients in drug treatment centers come from fatherless homes. Children from fatherless homes are 5 times more likely to commit suicide, 32 times more likely to run away, 20 times more likely to commit what you would call bad behavior, and 14 times more likely to commit rape, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to really end up in prison. These examples are a clarion call to fathers of this generation as well as mothers. We must do so much more than put our families and marriages on cruise control. In the early portion of 1 Samuel, we are introduced to a multitude of characters. The stage is literally being set for the arrival of Samuel, who will serve as a priest, a prophet, and a judge of Israel. Amen. He'll be required to guide Israel through the early stages of the monarchy that they have so clamored for, that they wish for. As we are introduced to Samuel, there are some minor players on the stage. We find a tired old man with 2 wild sons. It could have been 2 wild daughters, but in the scripture, Samuel had 2 wild sons. There has been a day, though, that this old man hadn't been tired with his 2 sons, and they haven't been wild. But some poor choices have left these young men fatherless, and now they are living in the throes of a wasted life. As one reads the account in 1 Samuel 1 through 4, there's a notable absence of a mother. She is not mentioned, and we are left to wonder where she plays into the picture. Eli steadily shows us a picture of a man's life in a professional environment, in a personal world, and in a physical condition. Scattered throughout these first 4 chapters, we find very brief picture of who Eli really is. He was the father of 2 sons. He was a high priest. He was very old. He had failing vision, and he was grossly overweight. Eli's sons, they followed in their father's footsteps as priests. Although they followed him in occupation, they did not follow him in commitment.
That's true.
When you begin to read 1 Samuel and 2, you quickly notice a very cavalier attitude toward their own personal sin and toward their priestly responsibilities. In their personal lives as well as their heart, they were light years from God. They sinned blatantly and openly in the house of the Lord. When the eyes of Israel saw their misdeed, they reported their failures to Eli. When Eli confronted them with their action, the account given in Scripture betrayed their stubborn and rebellious pattern. In 1 Samuel 2nd chapter, verse 24 and 25, "Nay, my son, for it is no good report that I hear you make the Lord people to transgress. If one man sins against the other, the judge shall judge him. But if a man sins against God, who shall entreat for him? Notwithstanding, they hearken not unto the voice of their father, because the Lord will slay them." Then over in the New Testament, the words of Paul describe Hophni and Phinehas. Exactly. In Ephesians, it says, having the understanding darkness, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their heart, who being past feeling have given themselves over to lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness. Listen, when a man starts resisting spiritual truth, or a woman, then that truth becomes external to that person. So every time that person will have some spiritual truth strikes their heart, no spark ever flames up. The only thing that happens is a colorlessness, that's a coldness right there, and hardness that further resists the voice of truth. They're not able to hear the voice of truth because of the callousness and the coldness, the hardness of their heart. But in time, with the word of God, ice began to melt into water once it get hot. That is what every brush with God in the tabernacle did. They resisted truth. They resented authority. And finally, they rebelled openly. openly. They flagrant immortality, rage in their heart and spill over into their action. The difficulty hit all was their own father wishy-washy attitude towards their action. Finally, God stepped in with an irreversible judgment. God got fed up with it. Amen. This is one that he is appointed as a priest. He was a judge. He had him in high places, but he didn't have time to tend to his sons. In 1 Samuel 3rd chapter, verse 13 and 14, for I have told him that I would judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not. And therefore, if I have sworn unto the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice nor offering forever. One can reach a point in his action that God would no longer cover the sins of the offender. That is the sin unto death. In 1 John 5 and 16, a state of open rebellion to bring a man into a state of being a reprobate. All through this account, there were several types of messengers that God used to warn his impending judgment. The first warning was in the form of a public report in 1 Samuel 2:24. The second warning was given by an unnamed prophet. That's in 1 Samuel 2nd chapter, verse 27. The third and last warning was given from God in a vision to the young Samuel. That's in 1 Samuel 3, verses 11 through 12. Then Samuel conveyed the message to Eli. Eli responds to this with little more than a slap on the hand. So he said unto them, why do these such things? For I hear of your evil dealing by all of this people. Nay, my sons, for it is no good report that I hear. You make the Lord people to transgress. This was perhaps his biggest mistake. 4 lessons from the breakdown of Eli's home. Hear me carefully. Although I remember a year ago when I went to my grandparents' home back in Florida, and I seen how the house looked after it was left for the family members. They ain't really paid too much good attention to that house since they had their own house. Only thing they were just concerned about paying the taxes and letting the house stay there. I seen the weeds had begun to grow up a little bit. Not looking too pleasant right there. But even more sad than this, I seen the slow disintegration of a family. We have discovered Eli and his sons, but there's some very clear lesson that can be gleaned from his relationship with his son. There was some sign that Eli's home was falling apart. The first lesson we learned is that there was a preoccupation with the job to the exclusion of a family needs. Eli's intense focus on his responsibility as priest and judge relegated his family to take the back seat. The family was the background. It's no wonder that Eli did not pick up on some of these traits of his wayward sons. One of the paralyzing factors in Eli's life was that he took on too much. Eli was a great man like Moses. He was not a great man like Moses and Aaron, but he attempted to take on the roles of both of these men. In other words, he was a workhorse. He was a workhorse all the time. He stepped in as a judge of Israel, as Moses, and then to compound that, he took on Aaron's role as the high priest of Israel. In other words, sometimes you have too much on your plate. His commitment to hard work, which could be classified as a virtue, because nothing will be accomplished without hard work. But this virtue turned to vice, and the result that his sons paid the penalty. My arm of my life, you might recall this story when it happened a few years ago. It was an incident that occurred, and it always stayed in the back of my mind because of what this gentleman done at the last moment. It was on April the 26th, 2003. Aaron Raston, he was enjoying a passion that he had called mountain climbing in a remote area of Utah. While he was climbing through a tiny opening about 3 feet wide, he put his right hand on a nearby boulder to adequately brace himself to climb through the opening. When he did, his weight caused the huge boulder to shift, and the shifting trapped his hand. He did everything that he could to free his hand, but nothing worked. As darkness fell that night, he knew he was in trouble. By the way, April the 26th was on a Saturday. By Tuesday, he was completely out of water and had given up the hope that he would be found by any other climbers who were in the area. If he was going to survive, he was going to have to save himself. Hear me carefully. Now, he was down to only one escape route. It was a morbid one, but it was all that he had left now. Not only was it morbid, it was almost unthinkable. He was considering cutting off his arm directly below the elbow. The difficulty was the knife that he had, it was a small, dull pocket knife. And he had earlier tried cutting his arm, but the dull knife couldn't even break the skin. So Aaron spent most of Wednesday trying to think of exactly what he would have to do to amputate his arm. He knew that a tourniquet was imperative because he could not afford to lose much blood. After a day and a half without water, he was in a serious state of mind. They call that derision, when you get all this confused and everything, don't know what you're going to do. And then he became in a serious state of dehydration and weak from the lack of food. Trying to think through more of the details, he thought that he was probably 5 miles or more from his pickup. On Thursday, the 5th day, he decided that he was going to be now or never. His arm or his life. It comes a time in life, saints, you have to make a decision that it's going to be now or never. Now or never. In Matthew 5th chapter, verse 30, it says, if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that the whole body should be cast into hell. I have met a few people in my life who were trapped, just like Aaron. Not in some remote mountains area in Utah, but in habits and lifestyles. Some are trapped by habits and whims of their flesh. Others have fallen prey to thinking that around the next being in life, they will finally catch the big deal. But unlike Aaron, they are totally oblivious to their entrapment. Death is looking them squarely in their eyes, and they lack perception of the matter. To their way of thinking, I have just made some bad business deals. I have made a few wrong turns. I can quit any time I choose to. However, when you get in that deep, getting out requires some drastic and immediate action. For Aaron, it was his arm or his life. He had to make a hard, difficult, and serious choice. He could not have them both. Aaron was a man of valor. He made the tough choice. After a crude amputation, he rappelled down a 60-foot cliff and hiked nearly 6 miles before the rescuers spotted him. He then was airlifted to a hospital ER where Park Ranger Steve Swanke told reporters, "I've never seen anybody like him. His will to live is unbelievable. I've been doing this for 25 years and I've never seen a warrior like him," the ranger said. The challenge for every person in this church is determine what is going to get the most of your energy. Your home or your job, your career or your children, your ego or your destiny. I know that those can be unsettling questions, but they are necessary questions. The first point, preoccupation with a job to the exclusion of the family need. The second one, a refusal to face the severity of a person's actions. When the reporters came to Eli about the wayward activities of his boys, he refused to see the facts. He must have ached inside to know that he was grandly successful at his job, but was a failure in the home. The problem continued when they defiant behavior when undisciplined. Each time this happened, they were making withdrawals from their character bank, and by the time they were adults, they were morally bankrupt. This is why the scripture implores you to raise up a child in the way that you would wish for them to go, and hopefully they will not depart from them. At least give them a fair chance. At least. Eli, being preoccupied with his 3 duties, did not give his children a fair chance. But yet and still, he handed over the reins to them at a later age. It was like putting an 8-year-old in a Corvette and telling him to take off. A crash was bound to happen. Listen, when the report came to Eli about their activities, he looked at it and he thought, he said, each time this happened, they were making withdrawals, he said. But I was not there to give them no deposit. Discipline or wrong behavior helps to shape our ability to make mature choices in life. A family is like a garden. A family is like many things, perhaps though, most like a garden. It needs time, attention, and cultivation. The sunshine of laughter and affirmation. It also needs the rains of difficulty, tense moments, serious discussions about the issues that really matter. And there must be spade work where hardness is broken, loose, and planting of fresh seeds is accomplished with a lot of TLC. Here are some suggestions for 15 rows of planting. I want you gardeners to hear me carefully. You need 4 rows of P's: preparedness, perseverance, promptness, and politeness. Then you need 3 rows of squash. Squash the gossip, squash the criticism, and squash the indifference. And then you need 5 rows of let us. Let us. Let us be faithful. Let us be unselfish. Let us be loyal. Let us love one another. And let us be truthful. And 3 rows of turnips. I want you to get all your vegetables. Turn up with a smile. Turn up with a new idea. And turn up with determination. And then, well, from then on, it's pretty simple. You got to water, weed, tend with care, and patiently watch the garden grow. Amen. Someday you will look back and realize you worked all the years, all of the work and effort and prayer. Like a lovely garden, your family will be a thing of grateful pride, of seasonal beauty, and of daily substance. But yet Eli continued to rationalize and justify his lifestyle and that of his sons. In Proverbs 19, chapter verse 18, chasten thy son, for there is hope, and to put him to death, lift not up thy soul. A failure to respond to the warning of others. When other people tell you things that are going on that you cannot see, you need to take heed to it and investigate it. Because it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village, and the villagers cannot have a blind eye to the misdeeds and the shortcomings that they see coming from that child. Because I'm depending on that child when I'm in my rocking chair at 98 to come and wipe the oatmeal from around my mouth in the morning time. I'm depending on that child when someone might snatch my cane that he gonna go get it back for me so I can keep getting around. So I want to make sure that as I'm raising this child, that this child has a fair chance in life. And now listen, a refusal to face the severity of people's actions and a failure to respond to the warning of others, God has ways of making the blind eyes to see. Sometimes the eyes that God uses are miraculous. More often than not, he works with the mundane, that's the earthly. Yes, he used teachers, neighbors, sometimes grandparents, and periodically, maybe even a policeman. Parents are sharp. I never saw it coming. I cannot explain how or why they would do this. It's a mystery to me why my child would be involved in this. Are you sure? My child would never be involved in something like this. Yet, Children are left for long unattended periods and not supervised. Children are left with computers that are not safeguarded. Children are allowed to have friends that have less than optimal spiritual influence on them. Children are allowed to attend events that are not God-focused or God-centered. Children are allowed to date long before they really understand the responsibility of dating. Children are encouraged to pursue things that would get them out of their parents' lives. Preoccupation with a job to the exclusion of the family needs, that's the first point. The second one, a refusal to face the severity of the children's action. Then a third one was a failure to respond to the warning of others. But the fourth and the last point, condoning the wrong. Parents actually become part of the problem. When they turn a blind eye to what they know is wrong, they actually become part of the problem.
That's true, amen.
In 1 Samuel 2nd chapter 29, wherefore kick ye at my sacrifice and at my offering, which I have commanded in my habitation, and honoredness thy son above me, to make yourself fat with the chiefest of all the offering of Israel, my people. Note that now, yourselves is plural. Some of Eli's own weight came from adopting his son's ways. He went from passive indifference to active indulgence. It would be centuries later that the prophet Jeremiah, walking through the ruins of Jerusalem, will lament how the sin passed from one generation to another. In Lamentations, our fathers have sinned, 5th chapter, verse 7. Our fathers have sinned and are not, and we have borne their iniquities. This is the recycled reality of sin. Yesterday lunch, today's litter, tomorrow garbage, and will all stack up on the family front porch. In my conclusion, a strong call to leadership, to revival, passion, holiness, and commitment to family is needed. And I want to leave you with the horseshoe nails. A blacksmith, he was shoeing a horse. He shoed him quickly, for the king was to ride him to battle. He said to the groom who had bought him, do you think there will be a battle? Asked this blacksmith. Most certainly, and very soon too, answered the man. The king's enemies are even now advancing, and we are not really ready for the fight. The day will decide whether Richard or Henry shall be the king of England. The smith went on with his work. From a bar of iron, he made 4 horseshoes. Then he hammered and shaped and fitted it to the horse's feet. Then he began to nail them on. But after he had nailed on only 2 shoes, he found that he had not enough nails for the other 2. I have only 6 nails, he said, and it would have taken a little time to hammer out 10 more. Oh, well, said the groom. Won't 6 nails do? Put 3 in each shoe. I hear the trumpet now. King Richard will be impatient. 3 nails in each shoe will hold him on, said the smith. Yes, I think we may risk it, though. So he quickly finished the shoeing, and the groom hurried to lead the horse to the king. The battle had been raging for some time. King Richard rode hither and thither, cheering his men and fighting his foes. His enemy, Henry, who wished to be king, was pressing him real hard. He was hardly halfway across the stony field when one of the horseshoes flew off. The horse was lamed on a rock. Then another shoe came off. The horse stumbled, and his rider was thrown heavily to the ground. Before the king could rise, his frightened horse, though lame, had galloped away. The king looked and saw that his soldiers were beaten and that the battle was everywhere going against him. Listen to me carefully. He waved his sword in the air. He shouted, a horse, my kingdom for a horse. But there was no horse for him. His soldiers were intent on saving themselves. They could not give him any help. The battle was lost. King Richard was lost. Henry became king of England. Why? For the want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For the want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For the want of a horse, the battle was lost. For the failure of battle, the kingdom was lost, and all for the want of a horseshoe nail. Richard III was one of England's worst kings. Henry, the Duke of Richmond, made war upon him and defeated him in a great battle. A little prayer was missed, a little relationship begun, a little attitude went unchecked, a little church was missed, a little wrong music, wrong movies, and wrong conversations. In the book of Judges 16:16, and it came to pass when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart, and he said unto her, I'm talking about Samson and Delilah, there hath not come a razor upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other person. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, be careful, man, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistine, saying, come up this once, for he hath showed me all his heart. Then the Lord of the Philistines came up unto her and brought money into her hand. And she made him sleep upon her knee. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his hair on his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awoke out of the sleep and said, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself, and not that the Lord will depart from me. But the Philistine took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with feathers of brass, and he did grind in the prison house. He was rocked to sleep slowly. Are you falling asleep today? Do you feel a lull in your spirit toward the things of God? Are you resting too far from God's glory in your life? Your enemy is waiting at the gate to steal the glory that God has given you. Dear for life, I want you to bear in mind, this was for the sake of a nail, that a kingdom was lost. He was impatient there. He was the sake of not being involved with the family members, that the children was not raised right. It is the duty of each and every one of us who consider or call ourselves parents, not to be lulled asleep at any time by our responsibility towards humanity. Not just those that are in our family, but those that we see that have went astray. It is our duty to wake them up out of their slumber. One person say, well, Pastor, how do you know when it's the voice of God? And before I sit down, you know the voice of God when it responds to your situation. I don't care what state of mind you're in or what you have done in life, when the voice of God enters into your tabernacle, into you, you'll be able to hear it. You might be just coming from the club and you're dead drunk, but the voice of God will step over the drunkenness that is within you, just to speak to you. You might have just committed some crime you shouldn't have never done, but the voice of God will step over that crime and speak to you. Whatever state of mind that you're in, the word of God, when you hear that clarion call, it will come in and create the earthquake that you need, that will reverberate within you and shake loose the dust where you have the king buried up under in your life. You're only a heartbeat away for your breakthrough. You're only just a minute second away from your coming out. You got to learn to come out of whatever situation that you're dealing with today. You cannot continuously to look at it for what it is and to ignore it. You cannot do like Eli did unto his sons. He did an injustice unto his son. Justice was not served. And then he had to hand the mantle down to an 8-year-old who's driving a Corvette. That was the state of mind that he had put the whole nation in at that time. We here, right here in Rio Rancho, we see the things that are going on. We cannot have a blind eye. We must learn to help reach out to cultivate those that we see that are uncultivated. This is an assignment to you from the gift of life. May God bless you. May God keep you. Amen.